Good afternoon, welcome to Salford Lads Club, live at the Lads Club show, and somehow we've managed to limp into the 9th show. Got a good selection of guests on today, I'm proud to say, but would like to mention a few events we've visited this week and birthdays for people. The big birthday obviously is Salford's 100, as you can see by the cards, mugs, all available in the gift shop, no doubt. Happy birthday, Salford, I love you anyway. Last night we was at Salford Trinity Church. There was an event on interfaith, talking about the people's love of Salford, which will lead me on later to my next guest, Kieran. On Monday we visited the Height Library in Salford to see the Phil Porter's photographic exhibition, Salford Now and Then. It runs until late July, so it's well worth a visit if you've got a love of Salford. And the good thing is all the photographs are in black and white, and they were taken in 1977, various locations of Salford, Odsal, Weast, Langwither, all gone now. And they followed it up, students from Pendleton Sixth Form College. They went out retracing the steps, and their photographs are also in the exhibition. Go have a look at Height Library, please go in there, beautiful library. A lot of the original fittings, I think it's 1904, might be wrong there, but go down, enjoy the library and enjoy the exhibition, that's all I can say to you. I've got to say, Caroline Jones has been on to me again and again. Eccles Library on Monday, there's the coffin collage. Now, bear with me on this one. There's going to be a horse-drawn coffin, horse-drawn hearse, with a coffin being taken into Eccles Library where a team of enthusiastic, I'll say necrophiliacs, they're coffin decorators. They're going to decorate a coffin and you're going to learn about all things death, how to cope with it, grieving process, etc. And the bonus point is Dave Hill is supplying the cakes. So Monday, 1:30, get down there. We might be there filming, not too sure yet. Talking of Dave Hill, you may remember he's doing these Salford 100 pies with all the money for charity. There's a few people you may see in the background who have purchased the pies. The pies are a £5, and the intention is to sell the 100 obviously, but other donations of money are welcome, so we'll break the £500 limit. I know the Freemasons have donated £100, bless them. So yeah, with the money he's going to trust us, me and Carl with the money, but we're going to give it to deserving causes throughout Salford, parties, food banks, etc. Well done, David Hill, you deserve it. Tomorrow, St George's Day, I'm sure you'll all be dressed up as crusaders, walking around the streets of Salford and Eccles. Enjoy yourselves. On Saturday, there's the Irwell Valley Miners project. Each year they have the memorial on Agecroft Road. Last year the memorial was to Prince Peter Lord Bengula. This year's is dedicated to a man who died recently, Ivor Kelly. So if you can get down there and show your respects, 12:30, you'll be more than welcome. Well, not finally, Tony Kinsella, a volunteer at the club, he's written this book, Studies of Levity, which I think is a tremendous book. It's 28 statues of comedians dotted throughout the country. It's obviously a labour of love, but the book's available for a tenner, and you can get it from Tony at the club. He's also having a launch night at the Bolton Socialist Club, and May the 8th, so get down for that. But if you want a book, contact Tony at the club or on Facebook. Yep, I think that's all wrapped up. Should we get on with what we call the show? My next guest is Kieran King. Hey, Kieran, lovely to see you.
Right, nice to see you too, boss.
Boss, I like that. Not been in strange ways, have you?
No, not recently, no.
We met Kieran last night, as I say, we went to the interfaith service at Sacred Trinity Church, and there was speakers talking about Salford, extolling the values and virtues of Salford, and Kieran got up and did a poem, which he's going to do for us later on.
Aye.
And Carl and I both looked at each other like two lovers across a crowded room. I said, he's good, isn't he? So we approached Kieran and he's to come on the show and do it. Kieran, tell us a little bit about yourself. Salford lad?
Salford lad, born and bred, love the city, and it was an absolute honour to have been asked to go and do a poem last night for the centenary of Salford. So yeah, like my parents were all Salford born, Salford bred, love the city,
Good man.
Followed the rugby for a while, you know. It's just,
in
it's
your
where
blood.
I'm from, it's in my blood, yeah.
Good man. Is it High Broughton?
Yeah, lived in Broughton, up Great Clew Street near the Star Inn for a bit, lived on Frederick Road, wandered around Chapel. You can find me around the pubs of Chapel Street quite a bit, yeah.
So, were your parents an influence on you in music-wise,
Massively.
and literature-wise? In what way?
Well, it was music. They got me into music. So my mum and dad, it was the Beatles, and it was David Bowie, and it was the Smiths, and like all the great lyricists. And my dad himself, he did a bit of poetry in the
really?
80s, yeah. And he gave it up when me and my sister came along and got a job and saw us right and made sure we didn't want for anything.
Good dad.
And then, but yeah, they got us into music and like I'm mad on lyrics. Lyrics, like, they really resonate with me. Problem is, I can't sing and I can't play an instrument, so what else am I going to do? So,
Poet.
Eventually a poet.
Well, how long have you been doing it?
I'm going to say 16 years. And I started writing when I was 28. So I was whinging about the 9 to 5 to a friend of mine. And he ran a cabaret night in Manchester. And he said, oh, shut up. You've got a minute. The next one, you're getting up and you're doing a minute. I don't care what you're doing.
Right.
Just get up and do a minute of something. Comedy, whatever, juggling, don't care. Get up and do something. So I did a poem. And he went, all right. And he went, oh, yeah, that's all right, cool. Next month you got 5 minutes. And he kept doing that until I had 20 minutes set. And then I went, there was some poets in the audience, and then they went, okay, what are you doing with this next? And they wrote down in my little book all the poetry nights in Manchester, and they started dragging me around.
That's what it
Like
started
stuffing
with.
my neck, kicking and screaming, going around these poetry nights, doing my thing, yeah. And I fell in love with it.
I doffed my cap. As I said, I love lyrics, and yeah, your stuff. I won't go on about that. But last night at Trinity Church, how did you get that gig?
So I've performed at the Trinity Church a few times. They do these acoustic Amnesty nights, fundraisers for Amnesty International, run by them. And they saw me at one gig and booked me for one of these, and they just kept rebooking me. So I've done a few. That's where I met Andy from Sacred Trinity, a really great guy, and he just sent us a WhatsApp. We're doing this for Salford 100. You up for it? Yeah, absolutely. See my poem before, I had to make sure there's no swearing in it. And then,
He's a great man, Andy, isn't he? He does
he's
such a
belting.
lot. We interviewed him a couple of years ago, and I was astounded. He was telling me he has not just punk nights on, but he has like thrash metal nights, black metal, and noise nights. And he did me a favour a few years ago. I was second a party of students from Scandinavia around Salford. And I took him in the church to show him his historical interest, obviously, the oldest church in Salford. And he kindly showed them around. He was as good as gold to them. And when he told them about the music nights, they always thought of the church as being a piece of solitude and quiet. And he's going on about with these thrash metal bands on there. They were made up with him. And tours, where have you played? What clubs and venues?
I've done all of, well, at the minute, I'm touring my book, Spit and Sawdust, that came out at the back end of last year, so I've been gigging a lot at the start of this year. I've done a lot of places in the north, Kendal, Wrexham, over Huddersfield way. I've been doing all over places. Did one at the King's Arms in Salford. So I've been touring all over.
So show us the book.
So like product placement, Spit and Sawdust. It's available through Flatjack Press. It's a belt. I'm dead proud of it.
Is it your first only book?
It's my first book, yeah.
Is Thick Richard, is that his published now?
Thick Richard, he actually does the foreword for that book.
Does he really?
Yeah, he's done my foreword, yeah.
You mentioned to me that you've played Glastonbury.
I have, yeah, nearly 10 years ago now, and that was probably one of the best weeks of my life, that.
Very was.
Yeah, I remember, because it's an open call out for the poetry stage. Right. You're just sending like 3 videos and a little bio of what you do. And it's hope more than expectation. Just send it in, you'd forget about it. Yeah. Because like thousands of people are applying for this. And I was literally talking to my mate and going, yeah, I've applied for it, I'm not going to get it. And then ding on the email and they go, oh, wow, okay. And then you book your coach down, jump on your midnight coach, you're getting there at 6 o'clock in the morning with your tent. Up in artist camping, that was weird. Put your tent up and you spend a week, you do your 20-minute set on 2 out of 3 days and the rest of it you're just at Glastonbury. And you're getting paid to be at Glastonbury. It's like, it was stunning. Yeah, like literally one of the best weeks of my life. I had a great time.
Was it televised?
Mine, it had been live streamed off the Glastonbury poetry thing, but it weren't on BBC now.
Who were your influences in poetry when you were growing up?
In poetry,
more so now?
So definitely in poetry. You're starting with most Salford lads, Johnny Clark. When I was 15, my dad took us to a punk rock revival night at the Bridgewater Hall. And it was Mark E. Smith, but he'd had a fall or something, he was in a wheelchair and he weren't all together. There was the Buzzcocks, Howard Devoto from the Buzzcocks, Pete Shelley from the Buzzcocks, and all the punks in the crowd were giving a bit of an hard time, but they were completely silent for this skinny bloke with his mad hair and his glasses, John Cooper Clarke, and he had him right there in the palm of his hand. And then he came out in the foyer after chatting to him and he was dead nice, and he was like, oh, that's how powerful words can be. Correct. No music, no backing, no nothing, and he had him right there for the entire set. And it was like, that was the first time, because poetry in school, it's a bit dry for the most part. I mean, you can have a little bit of an interest, you can see some of it's good and some of it ain't for you, but that was the first time I'd seen it really performed as like a live thing, and I thought, okay, yeah, maybe I can do that.
One I do, I like Clarke, obviously. Mike Garry.
Yeah, love Mike.
He's a good man, Mike.
He's a good guy.
Seen him several times. He was a librarian, wasn't he? But he goes round to schools, he goes to prisons, anywhere he can spread the word of poetry. I admire him for that, and he's a nice man. I like him. Get me the tickets, Michael. me plug. Is it just me, or has there been a massive upsurgence in poets? Everywhere you see it, everyone's a poet.
That's it. I think it's from the pandemic. I think people had a lot of time on their hands and were trying new things. Because it definitely, for me, the Manchester poetry, Salford poetry scene, Greater Manchester scene, before the pandemic was one thing, and then coming out of it, obviously things were slower because things weren't opening as much. When things started opening up, there was all these new faces. There was none of the old guard. It was all these new faces.
An A-way for youth.
Yeah, just go, wow. And none of them had the common decency to be rubbish. They all come up and they're good for the first time. I'm just like, I'm not having that. I weren't that good when I first started. So yeah, I'm jealous of them.
Don't be. I've heard your stuff. I've read the book. I've seen these posters. Well, there's one name in front of me, which is slams, poetry slams. What is a poetry slam?
Poetry slam is competitive poetry, live competitive poetry. I think it started off in America. Right. But we've brought it over here. I run one in Manchester called Slamchester.
Is it this one?
Slamchester, that's the one. It's 53-2 in just off Deansgate. And the emphasis on that, because I think again, as a poet, sometimes when you say you're a poet, you know what people get brought back to that dryness, to that school stuff, and they don't recognise. They have to actually hear it to get what you're coming from. If you say poet, they almost seem switch off. And I want to be able to take people to a night where you go to a comedy night, you know what you're expecting. You go to a music night, you know what you're expecting. I want people to come to that night, Slamchester, and they know it's a night of entertainment, and they're going to have a fun time and going to walk out smiling. Right. Yeah.
So what, you got 8 poets, 2 rounds, that 2
poets? So it's going to be 8 poets, and I've handpicked the poets. So it's booked, no one applies for it. They are booked, so I know it's quality. They do 2 poems each. They've got judges in the audience. They give them marks out of 10. The winner wins the pot and gets the guest spot at the next event.
Brilliant. Yeah. So it says here, Arch 19 Watson Street, is that correct?
Arch 19 Watson Street, just near Deansgate, near the Hilton, 53-230.
£6 in advance, £8 on the door. Will you be performing? Are you
I'm hosting, so I'll probably do a poem at the start with. Yeah. But mostly I'm comparing.
So what gigs have you got forthcoming yourself?
So I'm all over. Like I'm doing a couple in Wolverhampton, doing some in Peterborough, but if we're looking more locally, the next one locally be the 21st of May at the Whitefield Garrick Theatre. So I'm doing a headline slot there for their Whitefield Poetry Social. And then on the 12th of June, I'm doing All That Malarkey at the Carlton Club in Prestwich, and that is a fundraiser for a children's cancer charity. So I'm hoping that one's going to be big. There's a musician called Daniel Darley playing, and the headliner is Smug Roberts doing a bit of comedy.
Oh yeah. Well-known character on the scene, isn't it, Smug? Last night, honestly, it sounds daft and going back to it, but you really stole the show.
Oh,
if you know what I mean? Because you had like an air of grittiness, but humour about Salford, which I think is Salford, isn't it?
Well, it's my Salford.
Yeah, it's our Salford. Would it be rude to say that your wife is a poet without being
it's not. No, I am very, very lucky that my wife's a poet. She's we met at Poetry Night, so that's just another thing that poetry gave me. It gave me my wife. She moved over here from Canada. Right. She was living in Huddersfield at the time, but I've dragged her over this side of the Pennines. She lives here now. Her name's Rose Condo. She's a fantastic poet in her own right. Yeah.
Is it competitive in your house?
Can be, only when we're in the same slam against each other. Yeah.
Are you going to do that poem you did last night?
Do it now, yeah. I can do this. So
What's the title?
It's called Salford is a Broadway Musical.
How did you come up with that?
How did I do that? I was looking I was trying to stretch myself in my writing, and we were looking at surrealism, like describing things that aren't the things that they are. And I don't know why Broadway musical came into it, but as soon as I latched onto that, Salford is, and a Broadway musical, it just all fell into place. And this is pretty much a first draft. There weren't much editing with this. Right. It just fell out of me. And it was in response to when Media City moved up. It was written in response to some unkind things that were being said about Salford in some of the wider media at the time. I remember I think it was Jeremy Clarkson, and I am paraphrasing, I'm not sure if this was the exact quote.
Thing.
He said something along the lines of, I don't know why they're moving up there, it's all car thieves and drug dealers. So I wrote this in response to him and the ilk of him. So Salford is a Broadway musical. I never noticed it before, but Salford is a Broadway musical. Enter stage left. Tracksuit wearing troubadours, tinny mobile phone speakers soundtrack a grand performance. The Precinct is a cast of dozens, Gene Kelly in their way through puddles, past pensioners monologuing the old days. Students dance with umbrellas. Parents pirouette with prams, and child actors cry and command passing a toy shop window. They're all often upstaged by scene-stealing villains. It's a shame, because they're just a bit part. And Salford is a Broadway musical. You might not believe me, but Salford is a Broadway musical. The set, it's low budget. The cast didn't go to RADA. The audience don't clap politely like sea lions begging for fish. They are rocky, horror, rowdy. And the worst reviews come from those who ain't even been to the show.
A round of applause for that.
Thank you very much, man.
You nailed it there. You really have, Kieran. So pleased we came last night to see you. And so glad you've come on the show.
That's an absolute pleasure, man.
No, it's all we can say. So that brings us almost neatly to the break in the show, but there's still a poetry theme going on with it. It's called The Salford Way. And I've forgotten who actually wrote the poem. The Salford Council commissioned it, obviously. So can we roll the VT?
This is the Salford Way.
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 They say it's the people that make this place.
That's right, 100%.
Because I've been surprised since I arrived to see my neighbours nod kindly over the garden fences.
Bloom in beautiful conversations that feel real and authentic.
A magnetic pull to a people I can connect with, making me feel home, grounded, and accepted.
A city with canals to interlink in connectivity. Voices bringing pride that unite in our diversity. With 60% green space and a thriving university.
That's this other city, and I'm proud I've seen it personally, beyond its celebrated anniversary. What's other about this other city?
Where the streets are full of their own stories.
A proud people that see the colours in the grace.
Connecting those that are lost and helping them find their way.
A city strong together who choose dance in the rainy weather. And they could not have said it better that this is the Salford Way.
Happy birthday, Salford.
Happy birthday, Salford.
Happy birthday, Salford.
Happy birthday, Salford.
Welcome le Salford.
Happy birthday, Salford 100.
Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday, Salford.
Happy birthday, Salford.
100 years old.
And we're back in the room. I hope you enjoyed that poem by Kieran King. I'm so pleased, as I say, to see him last night and to have him on the show talking. But talking now, we're back by popular demand. Roy Matthews, the man who's been there, seen it, done it, and he's going to tell us most of it.
That's very off-putting.
Yeah.
You see your face on the big screen.
Crime Watch.
Right, happy birthday, Salford.
Yeah, happy birthday, Salford. We finished last time, right? You were just about to tell me about your meeting with Bob Dylan.
Yes, and then I did tell you after we'd finished.
I know, but the audience weren't there, were they?
No, well, that's just hard.
Their show, wasn't it?
Yeah. Bob Dylan. I'm not a massive Bob Dylan fan. And I had many arguments growing up with friends who were Dylan fans, who couldn't understand why I didn't like him. But something just wasn't right for me. So we had him at the MEN Arena. And I'd previously done a show of his in Liverpool, at the Liverpool Pops on the docks, where they used to have 30 nights of artists, a different artist every night in a 4,000-seater marquee. And in the dressing room, they had a white leather sofa, and they asked every artist to sign it, and they were going to auction it for charity at the end. And Dylan was the only one who wouldn't sign it. No idea why. So that put me off a bit. And then we had him at the arena, and we'd asked for a set list so we knew where we were up to on the night and when he would be coming off and going back on again. Mm-hmm. And his production manager said we couldn't have one. We'd never been refused one before, and I said, well, we need it for you. He said, I know why you need it, but he doesn't allow people to have a set list. So that put me off as well. And when he came in, he never spoke. You know, most people come in and say hello at least. Nothing off Dylan at all. So here's where we get to, I went in the yard for a cigarette. And I sat on a bench, and behind me, nobody else in the yard, and behind me was a big glass window with the arena security lads sat in there. So I'm sat having a cigarette, and it's dark, and this figure gets off the coach in the car park, black hoodie up, and comes sort of wandering over, plonks down next to me and lights a cigarette and said hello, and it was Dylan. So I thought, well, I'm not playing the game of speak only when I want you to speak. So I put my cigarette out, said hello, and went back inside. And the security lads were watching, they shouted at me and they were laughing. They said, you know, I said, it's Dylan, but I don't like him. So they laughed and I walked off. So that was the Dylan story, but I mean, I told friends about it and they said, oh God, I'd kill to have been sat on that bench. And I get that. But I also took his fan mail over. I think there was about 6 letters, and fans used to send mail in to the arena for it to be passed on. So I took his fan mail into the production office and said, I've got Dylan's fan mail. And they said, just put it straight in that bin there because he doesn't read it. So right, okay, so I threw it in the bin, but at the end of the night when they'd gone, I went and retrieved it and took it home and read it and realised why he doesn't read his fan mail. Because one guy had written to him and said, I've had a message from God that he wants you to pass on, so I need to speak to you. Bin. And then there was another one, which was a sad one. It was a guy whose friend was in hospital. I think he was in the Christie, and was quite ill. and was a massive Dylan fan. So this lad had written and said, while you're in Manchester, if you could pop in for half an hour, it'd cheer him up. So I thought, well, that's a burden you really don't want on your shoulders, because you can't do it all the time. So I got why you didn't bother reading them. I don't think any better of Dylan now.
No.
So.
I saw Dylan in Liverpool, must be 10, 12 years ago, and it was dreadful. I didn't even know what song he was singing.
Well, that show that night was shocking.
Was that, yeah?
Yeah, I think he played...
He didn't speak.
I think he played keyboards. There wasn't a lot of interaction with the audience. And as you say, and I'm familiar with all the big songs, and I'd be halfway through before I thought, oh, that's what this is.
Exactly.
And the crew boss, actually, Bill, was a massive Dylan fan, and he'd come to watch that night, and afterwards he came in the back and he said, well, that was shocking. And it seems to have got worse. I mean, I'm talking 20 years ago when that happened, and now I see reviews of it.
He's just announced a new tour.
Well, he's a man that never stops, isn't he? I think he's become so accustomed to the road that he probably doesn't know what to do with himself.
The Rolling Thunder, they call it, don't they?
Yeah, just the never-ending tour, exactly. I think it's normally referred to.
But say when he was in Liverpool, he never spoke to the audience, never introduced a song.
There's nothing.
He could have been anywhere.
A bit like Van Morrison.
And his voice was shot.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought, I wasted my money here.
Well, I was probably never a fan because I didn't think much of his voice, although I thought he was a great songwriter.
Great lyricist. Can't argue with that.
And now for his voice to get even worse than it was then.
Yeah. It's not going to improve, is it?
He's like Van Morrison. He doesn't speak. He doesn't speak to the
audience.
Have you met
Van Morrison?
Yes.
Was it that interesting?
It was. It was fascinating. It was. I think it was Paddy's Day.
Right. St. Patrick's Day for us.
Oh, sorry, St. Patrick's Day. And I knew that he doesn't speak to anyone, so I was determined to get him on the way in. He came in. He had a trilby on. And as he was passing me, he just happened to glimpse up, and I'd got him then, so I said hello, and he had to say hello, but I could see he spat it out. And one of the catering girls was telling me that she worked at his studio for about a month while he was making an album, and she made his dinner every day, which apparently is chicken and mash every day. And she said, I'd make it every day and take it to him and serve it to him and that. And she said, after a month, I was walking down the high street and I saw him coming up towards me. So I stopped to say hello. And he stopped and she said hello to him and he said, do I know you?
Bit rude.
And she served his dinner every day for a month.
Spat in it, I think, the next day.
Yeah.
Got further.
It wouldn't have been just mash.
I can forgive Van Morrison for the Astral Weeks. What tremendous.
Well, the problem is they turn out some great works, don't they? And you think, well, maybe it's the artistic temperament and everything, but I don't think there's any excuse for being rude.
No, none whatsoever. But he's always had this reputation for being grumpy, hasn't he? Going back 50 years.
Okay, it's not because he's reached a certain height. He's always been Van Morrison.
So, can you tell us about the jobs you've turned down?
Yeah, for jobs I've turned down on the list.
Yeah, you have. Sticking to the script.
Well, one of them was, last time I was on, I think I talked about the Stones at Twickenham.
You did, yeah.
And, I mean, it was a busy day, and obviously Twickenham was sold out, and there's a certain cachet around the Rolling Stones, and there's quite an atmosphere and everything. And we had the police turn up at one point wanting to come in and have a look at the dressing rooms. And I refused, because it's just an excuse to get in, really. They got in the end, but I wouldn't let them in. And during the afternoon, my boss came up and said, Roy, I've got a nice little job for you. Okay, I've heard that before. And he said, will you go and look after Mick Jagger's house for the night? Because it was Twickenham and he lives near Twickenham, and all his staff were coming to the show, he thought the local ne'er-do-wells will all know the house is completely empty. So he wanted somebody to just sit in the house for the evening. So he said, will you go and do it? And I said, I don't want to do that. I've not come all this way to sit in somebody's house.
Well, I'd been there like a shot.
Well, I mean, it would have been interesting to go through his phone book, but...
it would have been his phone book I'd been going through.
So I said no. I said, I don't want to do it. I said, and I wasn't in the car, we'd driven down, but I wasn't the driver. So the lad who did drive, I said, he'll do it, and he's in the car. So anyway, he ended up doing it. And so I turned that down. And it was, I think it was a 5-storey townhouse. And he got there, and Jagger showed him in. He said, right, you know, there's the fridge, help yourself. There was a dog, I think, but he said he won't bother, he's just asleep on the sofa. He said, the house is completely empty. Right, okay. So he left him, and he sat there, and he was trying to work out how to close the electric gates, but he couldn't work it out, so I thought, I'll have to leave them open. So he sat watching telly, and there's a knock on the front door. So he goes to the door, and there's 2 18, 19-year-olds at the door, and they asked for somebody. And he said, there's nobody in, mate. And they said, are you sure? He said, yeah. And he's starting to wonder what's going on. And then he hears footsteps running down the stairs, and he thinks, oh, I've been done. Right. And it was Jagger's son, who has a flat on the top floor. Right. And he'd just not told him he was in. So it was a scare for a moment. Yeah. And anyway, then it went off okay. And when he came back, I did ask him if he'd looked through the phone book. And he said, oh no, because I don't know what cameras are in that house. There could be cameras everywhere.
There will be, won't there?
Anyway, Mick came home and said thank you. Give him nothing. Not even a thank you. Because he's notorious for...
Is he really?
Yeah, tight pockets.
I used to like Charlie Watts out of the Stones. He was like the quintessential English
Well, I said the last time
was,
Charlie was the one who got me my lunch. Yeah, he was great. Yeah, gentleman, very snappily dressed.
Wasn't there? Always.
Didn't fall for all the rock and roll nonsense. So that was a job I turned down. Turned down a job at McCartney's house.
What, in St John's Wood?
In St John's Wood, yeah, on Wellington Road. Because I was working at Download, and my boss said, Roy, I've got a job that's right up your street. He said, I know you're a McCartney fan. How do you fancy working at his house? And I said, what is it? He said, well, he's having a party, and he wants somebody to work behind the bar. And I said, oh, I'm not doing that. I've never worked behind the bar. I can imagine the sort of drinks people be coming up and asking for. And I said, and it's 200 miles for one night. I said, no, I don't want to do it. But we'd got a lad who'd just started, who'd come straight from, he used to work the season in the ski resorts, and then he came to do a season with us. By this time, I'd left the arena, and I was working for a company that furnished the dressing rooms. So you'd go on the tour and you'd furnish the dressing room to the artist's requirements, and then at the end of the night you take it all down and go up the next one and do it again. So we were furnishing the dressing rooms at Download. So I said to this lad, do you want a job at McCartney's house? And he'd only just started doing this work, so that was quite a big thing to throw at him. And he looked at me and said, are you joking? I said, no, they want somebody to work the bar. He said, I'll do it. So I said, right, okay. So I phoned the boss and said, right, I've got somebody who'll do it. So he did it. And the next time I saw him, I said, how did you go on? He said, well, it's all right. He said, the first person that came up was Fran from Travis.
Oh, Fran
Healy. And he asked for a cocktail. And he said, and I had no idea what went in this cocktail, so I had to ask him. And he's all right. So he told him what was in it. He said, and then I sort of got the swing of it, and I was serving Ronnie Wood and Elton John, and you can imagine all the people that would be there. And one of the other lads I worked with, they'd had some bespoke garden furniture made for the party. And he was there when that arrived to set it up in the garden. And he said Paul came out and asked him if he wanted a brew and that, and then he said he went back in and he left the door open and he was playing the piano and singing while I was setting the furniture up. So I thought, well, maybe I should have gone. Maybe I should have just gone and helped carry a couple of benches in.
Yeah. With a cassette recorder.
Yeah, with a cassette. I mean, it would have been an amazing party to be at, I imagine. I was just frightened because I've never worked behind the bar. I've always been on that side.
Right.
And if they start coming up and asking me for sex on the beach, Especially if Elton John came up and asked me for sex on the beach.
You're getting out of one.
I would have panicked. And I turned down a job with who we mentioned last time, Russell Watson. I was asked if I'd go to America with Russell. And one of the gigs he was doing was singing at the White House. And I thought, well, that'd be quite interesting. So I said I'd do it. And he said, are you sure? I said, yeah, I'd do it. And it would just be looking after him. So anyway, nothing came of that. So I don't even know whether he did the tour or not. But it was one of those things that's mentioned in conversation.
Right.
You never hear of anything again.
The Beckhams you mentioned.
Yeah, I got asked to do the Beckhams at Buckingham Palace, or whatever they call their stupid house. They were having a big party for the World Cup. And I got asked if I'd go and work at that. And I said, oh, no, I'm not a Beckham's fan. And I really didn't want to be around that circus. I've been around the Beckham circus a couple of times. He asked me once at a Spice Girls gig, and he asked me if I'd take a photo of him and Victoria for their Christmas card. And it was the Spice Girls Christmas show, so there was a walkway in front of the stage that was all done up like a little grotto. So he wanted the photos taken on this little walkway. So I said, yeah, I'll do it. So he gave me the camera, and the battery was flat. So I said, the battery's flat, and he looked at me. So I got the runner to go out quickly and get the battery. He came back, and we'd got about 10 minutes, put the battery in. We went out on the walkway. I took some photos, and then people had just started coming in, and they just about noticed who it was on this walkway, and then I said, right, let's get back in. The Beckham people were panicking like mad. What are you doing out there? And I remember them coming in once. Normally when there's an artist on, and another artist or celebrity comes in to see them and say hello, that the visitor is shown into the artist's dressing room to say hello. But I remember Blue were on, and the Beckhams came in, and the Beckhams were given their own dressing room, and Blue were taken in to see them. And I just thought, it's all getting a bit out of hand, this, isn't it? And then David had left his camera in the dressing room. He came to me, and it had been locked. And he said, I've left my camera in the dressing room. And I said, right, I'll get it, and I'll bring it to you. No, I want to get it. So I don't think he trusted me with...
what was that, the contents of it?
I mean, who knows, but I don't think he trusted me. So it was a funny circus, the Beckhams. That was a whole Spice Girls thing.
It's still performing that circus, isn't it? With the fallouts with the Sons and Brooklyn, a silly name.
Yes, I met Brooklyn when he was about that big.
Caddy's head.
When he'd just been born, and it was all in the press and hello and goodness knows what else. And he came in carrying him, and I said, let's have a look at him. And again, he gave me that look. And I made a couple of noises to him, and off he went. It was a funny one. So I think, apart from turning down a chauffeur's job, I think, and a job driving Jasper Carrot, which might have been interesting, I think we've gone through the turned down jobs.
Chrissie Hynde?
Chrissie Hynde. I'm a fan of Chrissie Hynde.
I do.
Love the Pretenders.
She's got a good ethical spirit as well, hasn't she?
She has. She's a massive animal lover. Yeah. And they were on supporting UB40, who I'm not all that keen on. And it seemed like an odd support slot, really. I thought it should have been the other way around. And in the afternoon, on the way in, I'd picked up a couple of copies of the Evening News, and it used to have that colour insert, that Go, I think it was called. Yeah. And it was a big colour picture of her on the front. So I thought, oh, I'll grab two. So I took one into her. I just said, is there anything you want? I can't think of anything. I said, I picked this up in case you want it. She looked, she said, oh, that's great, thanks. She said, is there any chance you could get a few more copies? I think that the band might want one. So I said, yeah, she'll be able to. So I phoned the arena manager, John, and told him she was asking for more copies of Go. And there were always loads of Evening News in there, because it was the Evening News arena at the time. And he said, yeah, I can get some. He said, but I want to bring them down and give them to her.
Personally.
So I said, right, I'll report back. So I went into her. And I said, yeah, he's got, the manager's got some upstairs, but he wants to bring them into you. So I won't use the exact words she said, but it began with F and O. And I thought, you know, that's why I like you. So I phoned him back and I said, look, John, I'll have to get them because she said you can. And so I went and got them and gave them to her, and she signed mine for me. And so at the end, after they'd been on, I went out to watch their set, which was only about 30 minutes. And it was like a greatest hits set. Mm. And the crowd, the UB40 crowd weren't good.
It's strange. She actually married one of the UB40 chaps, didn't she?
Did she?
Chrissy Hine, yeah.
I remember her marrying Ray Davies.
She married a few. Yeah, the guy from the singer. I don't think it lasted very long. They had that single out, didn't they? I Got You, Baby.
Ali Campbell.
There's Ali Campbell, certainly was him.
Yeah, they did have that
record as well.
That duet, yes. So they'd not been very appreciative. So when she came off, I was quite disappointed with the Manchester crowd. Mm. And I went up and I just said to her, well, look, because it had been quite obvious while you were out there that the crowd really were waiting for UB40. So I apologised to her on behalf of Manchester and just said, but, you know, I'd just like to say I really enjoyed it. And she said, well, if you enjoyed it, then it was worth doing. And she shook my hand. Right. And then she went. And the lady, her dresser, who was a lady I knew, came up to me and said, Roy, I've no idea what you said to her then, but I saw her shake your hand and she never shakes hands. So whatever you said must have happened. So I told her what it was and she said, oh yeah, she would have liked that. So that was the experience with Chrissy.
You must have a great collection of memorabilia though, you've been donated and acquired over the years then.
Well, I don't actually, mainly because I've given most of it away. Right. I used to be involved for a while with a charity called CHART, which stood for Children's Arts. And they used to raise money to take children to concerts and the theatre. And we also raised money to buy musical instruments and donated them to places like Francis House. Mm. So I gave quite a lot of my stuff to them to be auctioned off. Just to, yeah. So, because you know, it's doing nothing in the drawer.
Yes. Have you kept anything special?
Yeah, I've kept the jacket McCartney gave me. I've got a few signed set lists of people like Gary Moore, Roger Waters, Chrissy. I've got a newspaper, an evening news concert review signed by Sir Cliff.
Pass on that one.
Who was great for both nights. Couldn't have been friendlier. I think I've got one by Peter Gabriel's. I've not kept a lot.
Oasis?
No. I've got the sign off Noel's dressing room door. Although I don't know where it is, but I know that's kicking around somewhere. I had a couple of t-shirts that belonged to Oasis, but no, it's long gone.
You had a Live Aid one, didn't you? Was it Band-Aid t-shirt? You got nicked.
I had a Live Aid t-shirt, a Live Aid t-shirt that was nicked off the washing line, but I've got a Live Aid t-shirt. When I worked on Live Aid at the end of the night, I'd got, during the afternoon, because I was bumping into people who I was friends with, who you used to see working on the concert circuit. And this lady I knew came up at one point in the afternoon and said, oh, Roy, follow me. And she took me to this locked container, unlocked the door, and when we were waiting, it was just full of the programmes for Live Aid. And they were like a book. They were this, a proper book. And she said, yeah, and she gave me 6, I think. She said, have those. So I said, all right, thanks. So I went and stashed them somewhere. And at the end of the night, the one thing I hadn't got was a t-shirt, and I was always on the blag for t-shirts. And the guy who was overrunning the security of the whole thing, Barry, he said, how did it go? I said, yeah, okay, but I didn't get a t-shirt. He said, oh, follow me. So we walked through a load of offices to eventually get to this room, and he said he only gave me half a dozen T-shirts. So I dished them out to the lads I was working with. I didn't keep them.
Great, yeah.
On the way back to the hotel at about 3 in the morning, I'd got everything in my bag. And I think there was 4 of us. My boss was there, and a couple of others. And I was always known for getting stuff. So he said, I can't believe you've not got anything, Roy. And I said, oh. And I opened my bag, and I gave them all the programme, and gave them all the T-shirt, and he said, you know, I knew you'd come up with it.
Yeah, because I'm from Salford.
Well, because you, when they come in the back, it's you're their connection between the arena and what's going on that day. So it's normally you they chat to. So I'd get bosses who'd say, whoever was on, Roy, when you get chatting to them today, and apparently it was completely against the rules of the company to ask for autographs, but it wasn't, because the bosses would say, my wife's a massive fan of Barry Manilow, so when you get chatting today, can you get something signed for her? So I would. So I was always the connecting point between the two. So I always got the stuff. Not Barry Manilow, but
I hope not. You met Mike Tyson, haven't you?
Barry Manilow's name was on that list on the back of the door in backstage of people we didn't like. Oh, I can't even begin to tell you about Barry Manilow. I know.
I can imagine.
Before he went on, his people said to us, right, clear the corridors completely. He doesn't want anybody on the backstage corridors when he comes out to go to the stage. And I refused. I said, I've been here all day. I'm not interested, but I'm not going anywhere. So, because he'd been in and out all day, he didn't speak, but you know, he was in and out. And when he came out of the dressing room, I sort of understood why, because the makeup was so thick, it was unbelievable. His hair looked like it had got a full can of hairspray on it. He just looked like a puppet going to the stage. And the funny thing was, there were two. There was a woman who'd won a radio competition to meet him. So her and her daughter were waiting at the end of the corridor to meet him. And she looked like she'd got her best sort of gear on for the night off Harper A Market. And so he came walking up. Nothing wrong with Harper A Market. I've bought lots of stuff off there. So he came walking up, and she flung her arms around him, which made him look really uncomfortable. And then she gave him some cufflinks that she'd bought for him. And his face, I'll never forget his face when he saw those cufflinks. And then he scurried off to the stage quickly. And the girl from the radio station that I brought them in took them back to the seats, and then she came back in the back and she was just laughing so much because she said, I saw your face.
What happened to the cufflinks? Can we imagine?
Who knows? But the one thing I particularly remember about that night, which I've never seen an artist do before, is before Barry arrives, he allows some fans to come in and cover the walls in his dressing room with pictures of him.
Freaky, isn't it?
And then when the show's over and he's left, they come in and take them down again and take anything in the room that's not nailed down. Cutlery, anything that's just going in the bags. And I thought, what sort of ego have you got to have to let them come in and put pictures all over the wall?
I'll never buy any of his records ever again now.
Well, that was probably a thing I decided when he first came out, and I've stuck to it.
You've got Mike Tyson.
Mike Tyson.
How do you come across
well, I did a few boxing matches. I did nearly all of Ricky Hatton's, and we had Mike Tyson fighting. He was an English guy, black English guy, and I think his name might have been Walker, might have been Michael Walker. He was a big lad. I did the press conference the day before, and I was watching him while he was doing his press conference, and his thighs were just huge, like tree trunks. He was huge, and I thought, you know, he might have a chance because Tyson was, you know, the best past his peak. I thought he might have a chance. He looks a good, strong lad, and he was ignoring the insults that were coming his way. He was listening to music and just looked really chilled out. So, on the day of the fight, loads of people in the back most of them look like New York gangsters. And so it gets time for Mike to do the walk to the ring. So they said, right, everybody out of the back, clear the back completely, apart from us, obviously. So we had to start saying to people, can you leave the back now? And all these, you know, pinstripe suits and cauliflower ears and that, and begrudgingly were leaving the back. And it got to, there was only one person left, and he was just stood in the corridor leaning against the wall. So I went and I said, no, you'll have to leave now, mate. And I said, oh, okay. Wasn't leaving, so I went and told him again, and the third time I went and told him, I had to tell him in fairly strong terms that, look, there's nobody allowed in the back. And he begrudgingly left. And I went back, and the lad I was stood with said, do you know who that was? I said, no. He said, it was George Foreman. Yeah. And I said, well, thank God he left.
I've got his grill.
I've got his grill. I just didn't recognise him. So Tyson comes out, and he's going to the stage, and he's got his entourage around him. And they're all screaming and shouting at him to get him wound up, or just swearing. And he passed me about 3 foot away. And even that was frightening. And he wasn't fighting me. And he just had something that came from him that just said, no, don't mess with me. And this big neck. So he went on. And I thought, right, I'll nip to the loo and then I'll go and watch a bit. So I'm in the loo and I hear 1, 2, 3. And he's knocked the guy out.
First round job.
So, yeah. So I went back out, and his wife, this Walker guy, his wife screaming and swearing at us all for not supporting an English boxer. And I said, look, I wished him well on his way in. I said, we're supporting him. Anyway, he was carried out on a stretcher, and easy money for Mike. But he was just a frightening presence.
Oh yeah, he's not a nice man, was he? Mike, if you're watching, I think the world of you. We've got all your videotapes.
Mike, if you're watching, I don't. But if you want anything, see Tony.
Yeah.
Who else have we got on the list? Let's do the wrestlers, shall we? As we were talking about boxing.
Fighting, yeah.
The WWE wrestlers. Who, I'm not a wrestling fan. And I find it all a bit of a joke, but it was sort of fun when they used to come in. And we had The Rock in and whatever. And on this particular afternoon, it might have been early evening actually, and the guy, there was 2 guys that used to look after them. One was called Graham something. And he said to me, is there anywhere I can watch telly, Roy? I want to watch I'm a Celebrity. Get me out of here. So I said, yeah, there's a telly in the security room, the arena security room. They won't mind, you can watch it in there. So we went in, and I said, can Graham watch I'm a Celebrity? Yeah. So they put it on, and we're watching it, and it was the one with Mylene Klassen.
Never watched it, to be honest.
Well, it was the famous white bikini in the shower scene. That was on all the news and in the papers the next day. So we're watching it, and Mylene's in the shower in a white bikini, and the 2 security lads that were in there were explaining in fairly basic terms what they'd like to do to Mylene, and I didn't say anything. And when it had finished, Graham said, oh, thanks, Roy. And I said to these 2 lads, oh, by the way, this is Graham, he's Mylene's fiancé.
Wow.
And the faces sort of dropped. But he took it in good spirits. And the next time I saw him, I reminded of it. And he said, it was perfect timing, wasn't it? It couldn't have been staged any better. So at the end of the night, he said, the rest of us want to go out for a drink, Roy. Where shall I take them? In Manchester. So I sent them to Canal Street.
Oh yeah, appropriate, yeah.
I thought people on Canal Street love the wrestlers. Wrestlers will probably have a great time, but I didn't tell him where he was going. I just said Canal Street and told him how to get there. And off they trot. And I imagined what a lively night on Canal Street it was that night.
No, it's quite an appropriate venue, isn't it, for on reflection?
Well, you'd think so.
Very camp, isn't it?
Yeah. So maybe it was a good call. I haven't actually done it because I thought it was a good call. I thought I was putting the cat amongst the pigeons, but afterwards I thought, no, it's probably a good night. So that was the WWE.
Do you miss the rock and roll circus?
No. I've occasionally been asked to do things. I went back and did the Stone Roses at Heaton Park.
Yeah.
Did the 2 days there. And I've done the odd one. I think I did Elton John on Blackpool Beach. And that got shut down halfway through the show because of the high winds. I mean, who puts a show on Blackpool Beach? It's always windy,
venue, isn't it? Yeah.
But, you know, the speakers in the rigging was swaying. Elton's hair was...
false.
Blowing in the breeze. So fortunately it got cancelled halfway through and I didn't have to do the whole thing.
I'm going to move very fast. What are you doing now then? You're doing some charity work still, is it for Eric Fest?
No, I might get involved in helping a bit with Eric Fest. I put a bit of money into it and obviously support it. And depending on who she has on, I might go and help out because Charlotte, who organises it, gets a bit stressed on the night. And I know Aziz is on, and there's a Blondie tribute, and there's a few other things. Now, I've done a couple of festivals that I've put on, and they're always to raise money for something. And I've put quite a lot of fundraisers on. I think I'm doing a fundraiser this Christmas for the animal rescue.
Yeah.
And
this Carrington one?
The Carrington Animal Rescue, yeah, which I'm going to tomorrow because I've got some money for them from the sale of my CDs. But other than that, I don't really get involved in anything. I got stopped. I went to the laundrette in Chorlton and I'd taken some towels to wash that we'd had for the festival I did. And the Chorlton laundrette at the Circle there is sort of the rock and roll laundrette where the Apollo and the arena and that all used. So I went in there to drop these towels off to be done. I bumped into the runner from the arena. He said, "Oh, Roy, what are you up to?" "Oh, not a lot." He said, "Do you fancy doing something tomorrow night?" I said, "What is it?" He said, "Ollie Murs." I said, "No, I'm busy." "No, thanks." It's it can be quite long hours and it can be quite tiring. And like Dylan, I'm not getting any younger. So,
you ever thought of writing a book?
Well, it's been mentioned a lot of times actually, and I did sort of start at one point, and then just got fed up. So, because I didn't want a book that was just about tales from the arena. I thought if I'm going to do a book, I want to do it from from birth, and. So I started researching various roads in Salford and, West Craven Street where I lived. And I probably did maybe 5 pages and then just thought, oh, wow, this would be a time-consuming progress. And I know all these stories, so...
Share them right now.
I just thought, no. I have a private Facebook page that quite a few of them are written down on, which I think you've probably had a look at. But other than that, no, and I've been asked loads of times, and I've got a friend who self-publishes, and he said, I'd help you if you want to do it.
Do it?
Maybe one day.
Maybe. Right, the clock has beaten us once again.
Really?
It has.
What didn't we get through?
Go on, anything you want to speak before we get on with? B.B. King?
Oh, we didn't go through Gary. Oh, B.B. King. Can I do a quick
B.B.
King?
Can, yeah.
I love B.B. King. And when he was at the arena, he was at the sort of later years of his life, and he was getting on a bit, and he actually did his show sat down, and he'd got, a bit of weight to him. But in the afternoon, he came out of his dressing room, and we were having a bit of a chat. And he said, just hang on a minute. And he went back in his room, and he came out, and he gave me a badge of his guitar, a metal badge of his guitar.
Is it Lucille?
Lucille.
Yeah.
And I said, oh, thanks, a Lucille badge. And he said, oh, you know Lucille? I said, oh, of course I do, yeah, I'm a fan. So anyway, I mentioned it to the lads in the lodge, and they said, oh, get us one, Roy. So I asked one of his band, who were all old black guys who looked like they'd been at it for years and years, really, all pros. And I said to one of them, is there any chance I could get a few of these? He said, oh no. He said, I can get you some plastic ones, he said, but BB only gives a metal one to people he likes. So I thought, all right, well, I'm keeping it. So in my pocket, I've knocked the mic off.
Sorry, I just hold your hand.
So when it came time for him to go on, the guy who looked after him came and he knocked on his door and said, BB, 5 minutes. And he came back, BB, 3 minutes. BB, it's time. Nothing. BB, it's time. Nothing. And he opened the door and he was fast asleep.
You wake him up, and
bless him. And I thought, that's great. You can just drift off to sleep
Some
right
age,
before
wasn't
you're
it?
going on in front of 20,000 people.
He'd be in his 80s, wasn't he?
He probably was then, yeah. And he signed a guitar for one of the wagon drivers, I remember. And the next time I saw the wagon driver, I said, how have you got on with your guitar? He said, I polished it and it came off.
Jesus.
He said, but fortunately I caught up with him and got him to do it again, and he explained to me what to do. He said to lacquer the guitar so it doesn't come off. Yeah, sweet old man, bless him. So I'm done.
Anything you'd like to talk about forthcoming?
No, we might have something to talk about forthcoming, but that's the secret for now.
Okay.
No?
Okay.
Thank you.
Right. No, thank you, Roy.
My pleasure.
Ever so much.
As always.
Most interesting. And
well done to Kieran.
Kieran, fantastic. Honestly, mate, you don't need any luck. You've got it in spades. So, tune in next week. We've got the Ian Key and his friend who've written a book about Smith lyrics, stories that must be told. That'll be series 10. We're debating on having a little break for a couple of weeks. We've done 10 weeks slog, and I was 6'8" and a full head of hair when we started this. So, right, we'll see you next week. Thank you for tuning in, and Carl, do the necessary evil. Thank you.